I've got very small cups today with water in it, but the big cups that I normally have beside me, someone's taken off with them somewhere, and who knows where that is. But welcome to the decision table. It is such a joy to have you here on the table today. I know we tried to do this a little while ago, and we had issues with the internet, so that's sort of almost fixed, although I do have to say to you, I've got a guy coming in tomorrow to upgrade us on a whole new system. So I've kind of got the MacGyver moment happening right now, where it works as long as we keep breathing and we don't move anything. We hope that it continues to work. So it's so good to have you here. These are just casual conversations where we are diving deep into whatever that takes us and wherever that goes, because those are where the learnings are. I think, one of the things that has been interesting throughout these conversations is just returning back to people as human beings, and realizing that each one of us has things that we do, things that we talk about, things that we're learning about right now, and how do we do that well and turn up in what we're meant to turn up each day. And I think that's the exciting thing. And this month we've had the lens of the muscle of human intelligence, and that's been intriguing and some really interesting insights, one of them being about listening. I'd love your thinking around that.
Yeah, I find when people are listening, they're not, like, when people are hearing, they're not listening, if you know what I mean. Like, it's the same when people are talking, or if you're reading a book or something, people take away what they need to hear. So if someone's saying something and someone takes away something different, which happens a lot, it's such a personal exchange, and it might be frustrating for the person who's talking, but it might be a really healing experience for the person listening. It's such a it's such a personal thing to go through. Listening, I'm terrible at listening. I'm learning to become a better listener. I hear what people are saying, but like I said, I don't always listen, and I'm someone who always reverts things back to how it's affected me in my life. And it's not to be to turn the conversation on me, but I want to kind of show the person that I'm understanding what they're going through or what they're saying. So if someone says to me, for example, I'm really super anxious right now, this is how I'm feeling, I feel sick with the stomach and all that kind of stuff, I would probably come and say, yeah, I felt like this when I broke my arm in Poland on Christmas Day snowboarding, which actually happened, by the way. But I'll be like, yeah, I felt like that as well, and I would turn it into something that had happened in my life, which isn't to take the message away from the person who's talking, but more to show that I understand what they're going through. I want to explain to them, yes, I can hear you and I'm listening to you. This has happened to me, so I understand. But then at the same time, I might take away something different than what they're saying. They might just need a hug, and I might then in turn give them some advice instead of giving them a hug. So, which is for something that I'm going through at the moment. I'm so sick of people giving me advice. I'm so ready for someone to just give me a hug and be like, it'll be fine. But as problem solvers, the humans are such natural problem solvers. When someone says they're upset or they're trying to get you to listen to something, you immediately go into problem solving mode because you want to help them. And we aren't, as a Western society anyway, we aren't really brought up to say, give them a hug. It's starting to come into play now. We're brought up to think, how can we help them? What can we do to help them? And often the answer sometimes is just give a hug. So when it comes to listening and understanding what people are saying, it's such an unlearning process to be like, well, what am I listening to and what have I been programmed to react as,
But how do we do that well when a lot of what we're doing is online? How do you give a hug online?
Well, I all the time write big hugs. I just write big hugs. I don't know. And as a writer as well, someone who loves to write long, intricate messages. I've often written them, then I've gone back and reread the message and then just written, I'm here for you whenever you need me, big hug. You know, because I've gone, oh, this is me giving the advice and they may not need the advice. So when I online, I think it's best to just offer what you can, because a lot of the time, because I mean, online, so many of my friends are online and I've never physically met them in person. Yeah. Like, I think I have more friends that I haven't met than friends that I have met now. So it's such an unusual situation to be in. But when you offer to someone, I'm here for whenever you need me, big hugs, you know, that opens up the channel to be like, for you to then reach out again in a couple of days and be like, look, I meant what I said. Do you need anything? Do you need a chat? Do you need me to send a lasagna to your house? You know, it's something like that. And I find that online, and especially because things can get taken so askew online, like if you send a text message or you write a comment or you write a post that is supposed to be neutral or has something that's relevant to you, it can so easily be taken the wrong way by someone else who's in a different mindset than the one that you are. And like I said before, everything is taken personally when it's faced you. And so that's kind of that's one of the really difficult things about what we're going through as this technological age. But I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, we're all a learning process, and how they take your content or your message or your post is their problem. You know, we can only just say, I'm here for you, big hugs.
Yeah. I find some of those things that you've just said are quite interesting in the way that, you know, you said, hey, I probably listen to some degree, but I don't listen to full degree. And then when you do, it's kind of like saying it from, and what I would say is it's saying it from your context. In other words, it gives you somewhere where you relate to, and they can relate to that too, which is great. Except when maybe you put your biases on something and they weren't even actually saying that. And so they're like, there's still that disconnect. I think that's the interesting thing around story, that story gives us context, but it's always context within regards to what lenses we use. So if we have some biases around something, we are probably going to translate that to a different story to then even maybe what it was written or said to us. And in the same way, we may absolutely connect with that story because we totally relate to that, because we've had to use those lenses. We've got those learnings too. How do we do that more effectively?
Yeah, I think it's such a learning curve. I think that you need to be exposed to a lot more. It's not something that's going to happen just automatically. It's not a switch that's going to be flicked. I think it's more of a, you know, you need to read more. You need to converse with more different types of people, like different ages, different cultures, different beliefs, different religions, all that kind of stuff. So that, because the biases we have are because of the way that we've been raised, the culture that we've been brought up in. I know, for an example, many years ago, two examples, quite a lot of my friends are in the LGBT community. And I had immediately, would be about 10 years ago, started referring to my romantic partners as just partners. Or I started asking people, how is your partner? Because instead of that bias of, you know, you're a woman, how is your husband or how is your boyfriend, you know, because I had so many friends who couldn't relate to that type of question. So I refer to my partner as my partner. Specifically for the fact, and a lot of people look at me and they're like, male, female, because I just refer to them as partner. But I found that when I am talking to people, I had to really make that switch in my head to remove that bias that I was brought up with, you know, male, female partners, boyfriends, girlfriends, all that kind of stuff. So that's one that I made. And another one that I made was that because I wasn't brought up religious, I don't have a religion. But when I moved to London for a couple of years, a lot of my friends over there were religious. So when I would say, oh my God, or oh, Jesus Christ, and all that kind of stuff, they were like, oh, you can't say the Lord's name in vain and all that kind of stuff. So I changed it very quickly to, oh my gosh, you know, all that kind of stuff. And that's, again, another bias that I grew up with. And it wasn't a personal attack. And they never took it, but it's something that I really had to learn, but I hadn't never been exposed to it before. So it's something I didn't know that I had to learn. So I find when people are looking to learn or trying to understand what other people are going through, it's purely needs to be something that you're exposed to on a personal level, like from a friend or something like that.
Yeah, that's interesting, because the biases play a huge part in how we choose or don't choose, and yet the extremes are almost so wide now. Like, there's so many things you're not meant to say or write, or so how do we balance that? Or like, what are you seeing in how you're writing? Are you stopping writing things that might be incorrect, you know, politically, or you know, within groups? I think that this is really tricky, because we don't want to upset people. We want to always respect humanity, and yet we still need to voice who we are and what we're about. So how do we do that?
Yeah, I'm a big mindset of you can't please everyone. And if you're not going out to intentionally hurt someone in what you've written and what you're speaking about, and if they get hurt by it, then that's not your fault. You haven't done it intentionally. It's something you didn't know. So if you're going out and doing something intentionally to be hurtful, then obviously you need to become more mindful of that and not do that. But if you've written something, and last time we chatted when we were talking about the braids, you know, I wear my hair in braids all the time, and I'm not from a culture that would normally wear braids, but it's so easy to wear braids with my hair. I haven't washed it. And that's not me trying to be culturally disrespectful. That's me wanting to put my hair in a braid because I haven't washed it for a week. You know, it's not, and it's something that I'm not going out to specifically be disrespectful to a culture, but also it's something that I have in my life that I'm not going to stop doing because it's not part of my culture.
That's such a tricky thing, because I know the same thing, that I have always worn lots of braids. And when I talk about braids, I mean like those really tiny ones. And I got married with my hair with braids. I've worn them a lot when I traveled the world, because it was way easier. I was on camera a lot. So I was on stages. And when you go from beach or, you know, like in the water to then jumping on a stage, you know, I don't have time, and I traveled with my children, so I didn't have time to spend, you know, how many hours in the salon before I go on a stage and then put my makeup on and do all that sort of thing. Like, that's actually not congruent to who I am and what I'm about anyway, let alone the practical side of that. Yet you've got to be able to be respectful when you stand on the stage. You got to turn up looking good, your best you can, and all those sort of things. So for me, the best that I could turn up was often having my hair in braids all the time. And you know what was funny? I have never really got challenged with it, yet there was one particular time, and it was actually by a white person saying that, do you realize where that's come from, what that's about? And I said, yeah, and I do it because of this. And I don't really at that point, I was like, I don't care where it comes from. I'm really comfortable with it. I love it. I feel natural in it, and I look good in it. And when I stand on that stage, I can feel confident as well, because I was in and out of culture, like whether it was in the front line of humanity, whether it was at really top decision tables, and I could bounce from those really, really easily. And so it worked well. You know, and in many cases that would have been upsetting for some people. You don't do it because of that. I kept doing it. You know, and I respect where it's come from in that way as well. But my mates have never, and that have come from the background of where that's come from, have never ever gone, you shouldn't do it because you're not me and you haven't come from here. They just know I'm in and out of tribal stuff all the time, and in some ways that made it easier because I feed it in more. And here's the other thing, I know I've had someone on here before, and she's born in New Zealand like myself, and so because I'm brown, there's this expectation that I should be exactly like the brown side of New Zealand. Well, here's the interesting thing. All I do know is that my background is that I was born to a full European, so the white Pakeha side of New Zealand is what they say, and obviously the brown side came from somewhere. I actually don't know where that's from, and in many cases, and you know, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of people speculating from me saying this, but in a lot of cases I didn't mind that I didn't know where that was. And in fact, I felt as I traveled the world more, I was more accepted by many, many cultures across the globe. And for me, that was, I really identified as a global child in that way, or a citizen. And it became part of my story that I loved humanity, and I loved being a part of humanity. And that's kind of where, not even through the insights of my work, but me as a human being, how I related to that and how I fitted into that. Now, there's many that would probably have an attitude against that or say against that, but that felt real to me, and it was how I saw it. And then, just even talking on things like this at the decision table, there's moments where people go, well, I hope you don't say this or you don't do it this way. And I want to be always respectful to humanity, but I also want to give voice to humanity. And I think there's this interesting, and anything goes here because it's a no judgment zone. So I hope people don't judge me for what I just said then, but it's true to me. And I want us to be able to be true to us, whatever our story is, whatever that looks like. Now, there's times when I have to pull back and go, this time is not appropriate to do that. Have you seen moments like that in your world?
Yes. Yeah, I think that, for a big example, the whole Black Lives Matter thing that started happening last year in the Voices, I learned so much from just the videos that I watched and the reasons things were happening. One of the most powerful things that I ever watched was this woman talking about how about the starting line and all that, and where the Black and the white people started and everything like that. And I understood it. I had known about it, but I didn't know about it as much. But what she impacted me was saying, especially when the looting was happening, was, the question shouldn't be, why are they looting? She said the question should be, why do they feel like the only time they're only ever be able to get this product that they're stealing is by stepping through a glass window? So, and I was just like, I was just like, what a power question, because again, everyone did was just focusing on the looting, and they're just doing it for the sake of doing it. But I was like, well, actually, I don't, like, maybe some people are, but the majority of people are in poverty so much that the only way they're going to be able to get that loaf of bread or the present for their kids or a TV or whatever it was that they were looting was by stepping through a broken glass window. And I was like, what type of society are we a part of where this is okay, where this is the norm that we just aren't told about all the time? And I know the media is so controlled, and there's only such a small amount of things that we see, and it's only started happening because of all the shifts that have is because, and the only reason it happened was because George Floyd got recorded, and that's the only reason it started happening. So I feel like, yeah, we need to be super true to ourselves, but again, be super respectful of what's going on at the time. An example, so if we have something that we want to say, especially as a white person myself, if we have something we want to say, or if we say the wrong thing, or if we're uneducated in some way, for the cultures that we're potentially, or the people that we're potentially hurting, to tell us, that we're doing something wrong, or that, you don't, that's not actually what it means, or you don't quite understand, or that's quite a hurtful thing to say, and all that kind of stuff. Because I know me personally, I never go out of my way to say hurtful things, but that doesn't mean that I never do.
Yeah.
So
Such a good point.
Yeah, but I would like people to tell me that I've done something or said something wrong and said, actually, that's not what happened. I can explain it to you. Or if you look up this book or this resource, or watch this video, this is explain. Probably explain it better, so that for next time.
Love that. And I think this is where it's all around our lenses in which we ask our questions. If we ask better questions, then we will become more aware, and then we can, ensure that whatever it is to us, that we are, putting that in place. And I think that that's the thing. When you've got different lenses, you can use different filters to then how you will act, do, speak, see, whatever it is, right? It's interesting because I think that, it's easy for us to just hear pieces of the puzzle, and we're not always hearing, like, even with social media. I mean, that's one of the reasons there's this huge kerfuffle right now around the media and what is being exposed to us versus what, maybe if we had more of a variety, then we would have less biases a particular way. And I think that's an interesting concept. How are you finding, like, you're in a generation where not everyone would be doing or thinking or acting the way that you are? What are you seeing?
I'm seeing a generation, especially, that's really struggling to come to terms with everything that's changing. So we've got our parents' generation, which is so set in their way that they're not really open to changing. Like, a lot of people aren't open to the change. And then we've got the generations below us, which grew up in a world that was a lot more accepting and a lot more, beginning to open up and understand, and they're a lot more aware of where their future is heading. Whereas my generation grew up in the generation that's right in the middle of having the super, super closed off parents and grandparents, and the super open-minded, like, cousins and all that kind of, like, younger generation. So especially with my generation, I found that so many people confused. My generation has a super high anxiety level. They're in that generation where we're trying to please everyone, but know that we can't. It's such a tough area to be into, because we're trying to become to become leaders for I know for my kids especially, we're trying to become leaders for the younger generations, so that they don't have to remove as many blocks within them as what we have. Like, this last 3 months, I think, of my life have just been a shift after shift after shift after shift after shift. And with everything that's happening in the world, it's not a lot of it's been in my control. And I think, as a generation who was kind of taught that, this is what you control, that, you get the good job, you do the school, you go to the uni, and because this is what we did, and we controlled everything we did. So we're in that mindset. Well, we've been taught that we control everything, but the reality is that we don't. And so the younger generations know this. So they obviously have to deal with everything that's come before them as well. But they have that open mind of knowing that what will be. But my generation and me myself, we're in that shift of where we know that we control things, but we just don't know how. We don't know how to do it because we haven't been taught, and we can't ask anyone else. We can't ask the older generation, because they'll be like, no, that's not how it's done. It's done this way. And when you question it, they go, that's how it's always been done. So it's such a tough situation to be in. And you've got the people who, in my generation, who staunchly listen to their parents and their grandparents. They're like, no, this is how it's done. And then you've got the people who are half questioning and going, I know that's not what it used to be, but, is it like that anymore? And then you've got the people who are like, the universe will guide us exactly where we need to go, and we're all on the same path, and this is what we're doing, and we're creating the new world. And I'm probably somewhere between the second and third rung in that.
Yeah, you bring up so many good points there. Firstly, how do you see us narrowing that gap?
I think it just needs to be more exposure. I've already said this before. It just needs to be more exposure. That, like, there are so many people who just don't know what's available and what's open to them, and how it all how it all works and what power they have and how powerful their messages are, because people still believe that no one wants to listen to them. Like, you know, the Brittany Hockley that's going on at the moment in Parliament, and people are still saying, well, if it happened 2 years ago, why is she bringing it up now? And you're like, well, because no one would have listened to her 2 years ago, you know? So
true.
It's still in that process of, you know, there wasn't a safe space for her to come out, but now there is. And, you know, but people, those closed-minded people still saying, but why this isn't how it's done, you know, no one wants to hear about this. But I'm so glad that it's starting to come out, because it's bringing up so much more topics to talk about. And another thing that I'm actually quite passionate about that I haven't really spoken to much is the Johnny Depp Amber Heard situation that happened last year, for a really high profile situation. And while I don't know much about it, I obviously don't know them personally. I don't believe that either party was innocent in whatever happened. But for me, for Johnny Depp to have lost everything instantly, what I feel like that message that came out was that every male that has ever been abused, who was praying that Johnny Depp would get some sort of redemption from it or some relief, so that they could come out and speak their truths, it was just shut down immediately. So I really feel like in the growth type of momentum that we're trying to go in, I feel like that was such a lost cause, or such a lost, what's the word I'm looking for? Growth scenario for us as a planet to go into, because they are such high profile celebrities that I think there would have been millions of men watching this who have been abused to go, well, if Johnny Depp can come out of it and be believed that he was abused in some way, shape or form, then if I come out, maybe I can also be believed. But it's still such a you know, women being abused has only just started to come out, and more beliefs starting to happen. It hasn't even really been spoken that men get abused as well. So, and I feel like because men have such a higher rate of suicide levels, because they are taught that to be strong and tough and, you know, hunter-gatherer type situations, and along with the women having to be the full raising the kids and everything, while the world is changing, the stereotypes are still there. The stereotypes aren't changing as quickly as the world is. So it's such a difficult situation to be in, you know.
It is, but here's the thing I'm learning. So I love what you say there. The stereotypes haven't changed. The world is changing, but the stereotypes isn't. I'm always creating new words for things, even with team members, with what I do, how I do it. And the reason is so that we don't have the biases that come with it. And, you know, I used to always start my this is when I first started working with women many moons ago. And I used to say, I'm, you know, because I was known as a butt kicker. And so I would introduce myself going, so have you ever met another butt kicker? And they'd go, no. And I'd go, great. So that means you haven't met someone like me who can bring and deliver what I can today. And so it was just a great way to get people out of, I could have come as, well, I work with, you know, women entrepreneurs and help you to get your work-life balance, but so does everyone else. And so it just put this frame on it that maybe I don't know her, maybe I don't know what she can bring to the table, maybe I'll be open to that. And, you know, that began many times of framing how to do things in different ways so that I could then help people to break out from that. Because I think I totally agree with you that many stereotypes aren't changing with where the world is changing, and that even just in generational gaps of what you're talking about, those gaps are widening because there's expectations on either generation. So here it is. I'm from a older generation than yourself. I am willing to learn. How can I do that better and more effectively?
Yeah, I think that goes right back to what we started this conversation on with listening and not putting your own biases on what you're hearing as much as possible. And because I mean, I learned to respond to people from my parents, from that older generation, which is why I still have my biases, or I refer it back to situations that I've been in. And I think it's more an unlearning process than a learning process. So I think it more just goes back to listening and asking better questions, like how, like you, when we first chatted, how are you really feeling? You know, how are you really feeling? How can I listen to you? Or you know, what situation or what is making you feel this way? You know, just saying, I'm open to the response, I'm genuinely going to listen, and I won't reply until you're finished, you know. So I think it's more of a, again, an unlearning, instead of don't give advice, just
no, that's interesting. So here's the other piece that I find really fascinating, is the anxiety piece. You said there's, you know, in a lot of cases, anxiety is on the increase within your generation. Why do you think this is? Like, where's this anxiety coming from? Yes, I get that there's expectations on either side that this brings it, but what else is creating that, do you think?
I think it's coming a lot from the fact that the people who are treating us aren't open to learning new things. So so I think a lot of the time, like I said before, my partner's going through a lot and he's dealing with a lot of things, and he went to the doctors yesterday and he got given such a generic prescription that it's not, the things he got given aren't going to help him. The things he got given are going to amplify the symptoms he already has. And they even forgot to give him one prescription. They said, oh, just walk to the pharmacy, I'll drop it off there. You know, it wasn't a checkup. And the problem we're having is that, the generation, so the anxiety that's going on in my generation's life, I think is happening because the people who are supposed to listen to us are trying to treat us in ways that don't work for us. They aren't learning about what's actually going on. And it's the same with like with the endometriosis that's starting to come out, and you know that, you know, having horrendous cramps and bleeding every month is not normal for women, or you know, a pregnancy isn't that bad, or labor isn't that bad, or you know, or even, you know, you can start having sex 6 weeks after you've pushed a human out of your body, you know, whether you say, you know, which your husband might be, or your partner might be cheering for, but you might not be ready. But it's actually
good point.
It's almost actually enforced that at 6 weeks you need to have sex. The partner is horny, you know. It's such a, or if you're not ready, oh, what about a blowjob then? You know, it's that's what people are being told, and you're like, well, no, I'm trying to breastfeed, or I've got a crying baby, or I'm crying for the last 3 weeks myself. You know, I'm not in that space. Oh, but he's gonna find someone else. And you're like, no, this is what's still being enforced in us. And these are the things that we're dealing with because of these biases that are still around, these stereotypes that are still around, that we even in, I think, LGBTQ environments, you know, that, you know, whoever holds a child or is doing most of the rearing, you know, it's you offer favors for happiness, and I don't think that's the way it still needs to go. I don't think that's the way it goes anymore, and I'm hoping that it's changing a lot quicker than what I'm seeing. But yeah, I think that has a lot to do with the anxiety that comes around with my generation and everyone else. I remember just before
I just want to, so before you go to that piece, I just want to make sure that I get that piece around the favors. What were you meaning by that?
About that you exchange favors for kindness. So even in you know, when people say, you know, you need to have, I'm thinking back to my parents and grandparents, you know, you need to have sex with your partner so that he's good to you. You know, you need
so that concept. Yes. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yeah. I just don't believe that's a thing anymore. Well, I hope it's not a thing anymore. And
beyond a partner, I think that goes into a business, that goes into an organization, that goes into, there's so many things. Hey, I did this for you, so now you owe me this. And that is such an old school mentality, like you're saying. And we see it rearing its ugly head all the time. And it's not just in partnerships. It's not just in relationships and personal relationships. It's in the business. It's in organizations. It's in communities. The expectations that come from that then are just huge.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I found myself the other day, like I have an amazing group of friends who help each other out. But what I find is that if one friend helps me fill up my cup, then I don't always return the favor back to them. I might fill up another friend's cup who needs help. And it's not that I don't love and respect the friend and genuinely appreciate the friend who helped me out, but it's just that I'm full now. So now I can see that someone else needs it more than this person. And it's not, and it's not an exchange of favors. I feel like it's more of a like circle or a funnel.
I think actually that's an interesting concept, because I really love the fact you're bringing this up, because I think that I've been guilty of that, even with my personal relationship with my partner. And it's like, okay, I did this, so you need to do this. And the gold came when I realized I just gave because I give and I love. And I think that that's what you're saying here, is what if we give and love and we spend time doing that? And that doesn't mean that sometimes I'm going to be probably giving you some love, and then other times I'm going to be giving that person love. And it's not, this is, hey, I've done enough here, now you owe me this before I'll give you any more. It's just, if we, and I really learned this year, because someone, and I can't remember where I heard it, but I began doing it on January the 1st, because it was part of this, having these consistent conversations on the decision table, which is, I just want to pour out. When you pour out of, that means that you've got like a giving spirit. You're thinking, how can I add value to the other person? And that didn't mean that, hey, when I got to a certain level, you don't get any more. That wasn't like that. And I think, what if we do it like that, rather than going, hey, I've given you a favor, it's your turn, pay back, return on that one, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think in a business perspective as well, something that has frustrated me so much in my business, that is when, you've done a service to someone and they pay you after the service has been done, and they don't pay and they don't pay and they don't. Then you have to ask them for it, and they're like, oh, how dare you ask me to pay for something you've done for me? I had this woman years ago who when I first started coaching, I only charged $1,000. I charged her $100 a month. And she just kept putting back the money back. And I said, if you don't pay me this week, I'm going to have to raise my prices. And she's like, oh, you money grabbing bitch, blah, blah, blah. I thought you were, a woman and you understood what I was going through. And you're not the person I thought you were. And I'm going to pay you this. And this is going to be the last time I ever talk to you. And I was like, good. Because I did this for you and you didn't pay me my $100 this month that you had a whole month to prepare for. And I knew the situation she was going in. She had a sick child and all that kind of jazz. And I donated to her GoFundMe. I referred her to people and all this kind of stuff. And I said, look, I actually have my own bills that I need to pay.
Yeah.
I need that $100 to be able to pay this bill. How dare you? And it made me feel like crap for ages. And, and there's been other situations like that in my life where, you do something, or you've worked with something in some way and it's hurt someone in some way, or they've gone, oh, I'm never speaking to you again, and blah, blah, blah. And it's not, and it wasn't, and, as I said before, it's never an intentional thing, but you need to fill your own cup as well. And, have that, especially in businesses, have that give and take of people doing what they can, doing what they can, so you can then help other people. And it's just whereas it's such such a tunnel vision exchange a lot in business at the moment, which I'm grateful is changing, because a lot of people are going, I am creating this business to help the world instead of helping myself. A lot of owners that I've met anyway. Yeah,
I so agree on that one. There are awesome humans that are beginning to realize, hey, if I do it this way, then I can help and impact in a really positive way, to adding value to humanity. And I think that that's a beautiful change. But like you're saying, I think that it hasn't fully changed. And if it was, we'd all be happy and we'd all have what we need and access to what we need as well, right? So we know it's not fully there at all. And in fact, a lot of that is in change. So let's go back to that thing that you said. And I think it's interesting, concept. The world is changing, and the anxiety is created because we're not able to change at that pace, or that there's people that are in generations that aren't willing to change. I see that with leadership. It's why I'm writing a white paper around the need for a new approach to leadership. Is so many times and it's one of the reasons, to be honest, I didn't want to be in leadership, was because I saw leaders that always you had to do it the same way. They sounded the same, they looked the same, and they said these were the 3 principles that if you do this, you will be the best leader ever. And I was like, wow, that's like one size fits all. It doesn't. And we know that, we know that that's not a truth, yet we have these systems that are created in ways that. But here's the thing that I learned from that was, okay, I know it's a problem. And what would I need to create, or how could I get it to a point that we can now go, this is a new way that we can do leadership? And what was I willing to stand up for and stand in and start figuring out to shift this from problem to an actual solution? Because I think it's easy for us to go, yes, we're seeing this not happening. Yes, this is happening with the generations, and some of them are just not going to change. So even in leadership, some of them are not going to change. They're going to stay doing it. Boy, do I meet those a lot. There's a lot of those ones, and that's okay. But what I am finding, and what is fascinating at this point, is there are awesome humans that are leaders across the globe who are wanting to go with that change and wanting to move forward. Does that mean we'll get over to solutions straight overnight? No, not at all. That's not going to be happening. But what it does is it gives hope. And what would that be if you think of where you are, what you're seeing with the generations, that gap that we'd like to narrow from generations? What would it need to take for you to have some hope there?
I would just love to see more conversations like this in bigger scales. So I think because there's like one person who controls the media, especially in Australia, that they dictate what we see, when we see, how we see it, all that kind of stuff. I think, and it takes such a long time for people to find people like you, or people who genuinely want to talk about how to create better change in the world. And I have found an amazing group of people who want to change the world and who want to change it for the better, but that's just who I work with. And I found that almost by accident. I mean, nothing happens by accident, but
I know what you mean.
I almost found it by accident. And people haven't had that accident yet. People haven't had that accident. They don't know where to find these types of resources that are available to them, because no one's allowed to share it. Everything gets taken down or blocked, or, this post has been removed due to violations or whatever. It's not easy for people to see that this is available to them. So I think what just needs to change is that we make it available to them. It's as much as we can, so even if that's like your post last week, and you said, is there anyone who would want to be on my podcast? And I was like, yes. People, so we need more people asking, who needs to have these conversations, who needs to be hearing this, or who needs to expose to this, so that people can tag or share or join. And I think once it starts and gets the ball rolling,
it's so hard. Here's the thing. It is so hard. We are having phenomenal conversations on the decision table. Do you know how hard it is? I still have very little subscribers on YouTube. I have, I will tell you that people will not necessarily do any comments on the live decision table. It'll be afterwards that they'll personal message. It's almost like these conversations are so needed. It has opened up so many opportunities, and I've realized how many awesome humans there are actually wanting to be part of this change. But I can tell you, having been doing this faithfully for the last 2 months, every single day, it has been so interesting watching how slow it is, how many people won't share it, how won't comment on them out in the public. So guess what? That means awareness is really hard to build.
Yeah, I know, because it's so taboo. It's still a taboo topic. People are like, oh, how dare I not want to do what my parents did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've got to have these conversations.
Yeah, I know. And again, it's such an unlearning process. You know, what we learn as children is still ingrained in us so much. Like, we need in schools especially to be like, you know, or in universities, that inner child healing, or we need, you know, in schools. And I feel like the schooling system is so flawed anyway, that they're not raising us.
Don't get me on that topic. That'll be another one.
Oh, and I'm sending my kids to a great school, like one of the best, but I know that I don't think I want them there forever because of the stuff that I'm still unlearning from what I learned at school, which was, you know, and I was in extracurricular. I did, you know, decent at school. I worked most afternoons and both days on the weekend. And then, you know, and I was still expected to do more and have more and be more. And my parents expected me to do more and have more and be more. And I remember when I finished school and I was working full time and I had 2 days off, I was like, I have 2 days off. And I was like, what is going on? But I felt like I was being lazy, or I felt like it wasn't okay that I had this time to relax, because that's what I was expected to do. I was expected to do all these things. And I don't want my kids to ever be in that high level stress at the age of 14, 15, 16, 17. You know, I got a job when I was 14. It meant I never really got to see my friends. It meant I never really got to see my boyfriend. And when I did, it was just, you know, it wasn't like for a long time. I didn't get to enjoy myself. And so I'm learning now as a 29-year-old to enjoy myself, to spend time with people. That success doesn't mean being super busy all the time. I had my kids are at school and my mum was at work yesterday, and I finished most of what I had to do. So I sat down and watched some TV. Perfect. And I have felt so guilty the whole time. I was like, I'm not going to stop doing this because this is what I need. But I feel so guilty that I'm not. I had like a tiny little bit of work that I could have done. And I was like, I felt so guilty that I wasn't doing it. But I don't want my kids to feel like that. And then it's just such a, and people still feel like that. I know so many people who feel like that success doesn't mean run off your feet. Success means happy. And it's such a, I mean, everyone's lapping up the work smarter, work harder situation, but they're still working smart while working hard, because they're like, I've streamlined this, which means that I can do 1,500 other things at the same time. So
I probably am one of those people more than the other one, I have to say. You know, I'm often challenged by particularly one person on my team who is like, so where are you spending that time just for you and doing this? And I keep going, well, this is for me, because there is some pieces to it. I mean, you must see this as a writer. Like, I love to have that space to innovate. And because I love to dream, I love to figure out, I love to work out things. I love to put design and try and figure it out. And so for me, that is refueling. That is, I know for other people, that's like, well, that's just more work. And I'm like, no, actually, that's the fun piece of my work that I really love doing. And I wish my whole 24/7 could be like that, right? But I would never get any of the other things that I need to do as well done. So it's interesting, because for some people, they love to sit on the sun at the beach, and they could do that for hours. If I did that, oh my goodness, I would be so bored. B, I would be whinging. I would whinge. I would be like the horriblest person to sit there for that many hours, and you wouldn't want to be with me. Right. But I love to go for walks. I love to get out. I love to exercise. I love the physical while I'm thinking of the brain stuff at the same time, because it's like I'm on steroids when I do that.
Yeah, that's when the inspiration flows.
Yeah. And so for me, that is actually like peaceful, and it's crazy. And I sit there and, you know, I can do moments where I literally just sit and I look, and my husband will go to me, Kira Marie, what are you thinking? And I'm like, nothing, I'm just being. Yeah. So I actually do things like that, but they're very, very small. And it's almost like this little injection. And it's just enough for me to go, and to breathe and to just be peaceful. It's that peaceful thinking. and be in that space. But I have to say, if you want me to be refueled, energized, all that sort of thing, it's actually not in those moments. Those help to keep me balanced.
Yeah.
But the actual energizing and the refueling is when I'm really busy with my innovative side of me.
Yeah, I'm the same with writing my books. Is that I gain energy while I'm writing my fiction books and all that kind of stuff, because I just know them. I just get the downloads. But no, I'm the same. I will happily, because I've got some really young kids still. I will go to the beach with them. I'll go to the park with them. I'll play with them. All that kind of stuff, and I love doing it. I mean, it's not an emotional break by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not working essentially. But I'm with you in the fact that if I meditate or I'm needing to relax and recenter, I am not someone who can do it for an hour, because I get so many downloads.
Me too. It's like, okay, where's that notebook? I need to write that down.
I'm relaxing, I promise.
And then it stresses my brain, because I go, what if I forget that one? What if I miss out on that? Quick, I need to put that down. And meanwhile, everyone else is like,
I know. I'm like, no, this is amazing stuff. I'm listening. I am relaxing. I promise. Deep breath in, write out the notebook.
So what I've learned is sitting by the water with my notebook and my pencil. And I literally just take that. And I realize that that moment is just as powerful as what someone else is experiencing. And boy, have I gone places with that. And I love that. And I think that's the cool thing, is that, you know, all of us have a story. All of us are different. We bring to the table so many beautiful things, just like you do. And I think that, you know, part of this anxiety, part of this, you know, generational gap is that there are expectations, whether we put them on ourselves, whether we think that because we've got the biases, or whether it is expectations that others have put on, you know, as this is the norm, this is how it's got to do. And I think that that's, you know, what I love about what we've talked about is the fact that, yes, we've gone there, we've created conversation around this today. I hope that you realize that I'm really listening to what you have said about that, because I think that this is really important, that listening, like we've said, listening. But I also think that it comes to this point where we also have to go from listening to going, what are we going to own with that? And, you know, what are you taking from our conversation today?
That I need to listen better, basically. I need to stop. I just need to work really hard internally on those biases that are still within me. And to just really hear what people are saying, because being a writer, I mean, working with stories every day, I listen, but then as a writer, I then have to turn it into I need to work, I need to pitch it. And that's just a business aspect of my brain. Whereas when I'm talking with people like you, or my friends, or new people, or if I need to learn things, I need to switch off that business aspect of how do I flip it to just listening, to just accepting and just absorbing what they're saying, so that I actually learn what it is they're telling me, or hear what it is they're telling me.
Yeah, I love that. You know, one of the biggest learnings I've had from listening is the fact that I realized that, you know, in general, most people are awesome human beings with so much, you know, sometimes we come with baggage. Sometimes we come with anxiety. Sometimes we come with whatever it is that we've brought on today, you know, and that's okay. But underneath is an amazing, smart person who, you know, we can learn from and we can hear, because they've got a different perspective to maybe what we've had or that we have. And because of that, then we can maybe even ask more helpful questions, because we've listened. And I think that has been one of the biggest learning curves that I've had over the years. And it's why I've become such a really avid, you know, listener, is because I realized that I came thinking I knew things, when I actually would learn so much more when I would stop and listen and not put my biases into play. And I think so that's an amazing thing. Okay, so if people want to know how to connect with you and do more with you, where's the best place for that?
So you can find me on Facebook. I am friends with you on Facebook. Jordan Wright is my name. You can email me. I can put the email address in the comments below here so that you guys have it. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, all those places. Jordan Wright. If you search the Mandala Chronicles, which is my fiction novels, you'll see most of my profiles on there. So that's a pretty unique way of doing that. But yeah, if anyone wants to reach out, I would love to chat with you, especially about all things that we've discussed today.
Yeah, I love that. You know what I'm taking from this? I'm taking from this the fact that the generational, I think I haven't really thought about that as much as what maybe I could think about that. And I've thought about it at times because I've been affected by it. But I've also had always throughout my life, and in fact, this was a question the other day, Kira Marie, who are your mentors? And there were just so many different ones that I've had because I've always looked for mentors in when I've identified a gap and I've gone for world-class people, literally, who are the ones, that have nailed that gap. And in saying that, I had this amazing mentor. She's passed away now, but for many years, she was like what you would call she was literally reminded me of Mother Teresa. And there's a reason to this because she was definitely a lot older than me, and she would go as a single woman to do work in India. And she was this most powerful woman that I'd ever met and been a part of. She was a very faith woman. And so it reminded me extremely of Mother Teresa. And, she sacrificed a lot to be able to do the work that she did. And anytime I got to, I would go and I'd go back to the place when she was in town. And I would literally just sit at her feet and I would listen. And even though there were things that I would disagree on, even though there were things that I would go, that's just kind of crazy thinking, there was so much gold in between that I didn't understand from her generation. I didn't understand because I hadn't looked through that as a lens. I hadn't understood what it was like to be racing out of one room to the safety of the back door to try and escape from what was officials trying to stop the work that she was doing in India at that time. And I didn't understand what it was like to have a proposal to be engaged and then sacrifice or make the choice. And she did say it was a sacrifice to her work, and for her it was God. So her work, she felt that she was to be married to God and her work, and that she wasn't to settle in a relationship, even though she loved the person. And it's moments like that I am so thankful I have learnt from the generations. And then there's moments that my son was born and he had extreme special needs. And I have learnt so much from him. I call him one of my mentors, one of my heroes, because there's insights that he brings to the table that I would never understand, except that he's had to go through things that I've never had to face, and he has. And just to hear it through those. So I've had the other side that I have realized that there is so much goodness, no matter your age, no matter your gender, no matter your thinking, no matter your religious space, no matter whatever it is, that there is just gold. Because as a human, we have so much to offer this world if we're willing to learn from one another. And so, when you brought up around the generations, I haven't thought about the negative side of that so much because I have learnt so much from generations. Sure, I've learnt it through leadership because I saw it as a massive thing. But actually through generations, I've always had the joys of learning from many generations. And I think that's because I've been willing to learn from them. And I think that that's the interesting conversation, right? Is how do we have more of these conversations with more of the generations at the table? And how do we do that more effectively?
Yeah, I think, again, it just goes back to the listening, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, so much that people want to say. Like when I came with just the day before I found about my partner's like issues that he was having, I came out in this rash, and I hadn't changed skin cares or anything like that. And after I found out, I said to my mom, I was like, oh, it was a preemptive anxiety rash. And she just said, you're not the type of person that would do that. And I was like, don't think that has anything to do with us. So I think my body knew something was going to happen before I did. And it came out in this rash to probably alert me to be a little bit on edge.
And here's the thing, you would have seen the build up to this. So that anxiety would have got to a point that it was so ingrained in you, and you saw warning things. And just sometimes afterwards, it's like, yep, that's what that was. We don't always know what it is at the time, but we know afterwards, that's what it was. So what I love about that is it shows that you are so in tune with, and you feel as a human that connection with your partner, that you already knew there was things that weren't right at that time, and needed extra support and help. What is it that we're finishing up now, but I just really want to give you the space. If you wanted to leave our conversation at the decision table and voice something, what is that?
Have the hard conversations, because the more that people have them, the less they'll be hard conversations. Just have the hard conversations, whether it's, for my own example, telling the real estate to shove off because my partner is sick, and explaining why, not being scared to share exactly how you're feeling. And if the person you're trying to tell isn't listening, find someone else who will. There are people out there, if I've done something wrong, or you've done something wrong, tell the person they've done something wrong. Don't just keep the peace, because keeping the peace doesn't actually, I hate it. Just have the tough conversations, because the more we do it, the less they're going to be labeled tough conversations and just conversations,
Yeah, I love that. All right. I'm not going to add anything else. I think that was perfect. Thank you for being a part of the decision table. Keep doing you, being you. We need more of you.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I'm going to end the broadcast now.
Okay.